Lona, it should be over to you.
Sorry, I was going to my spiel and I didn't have my microphone turned on. I just wanted to let everybody know have my smiling face in front of you for just a second, then I'm going to turn my camera off.
All right, we're ready when you are, Lona. Sorry, everyone. We're trying to connect Lona. We did have her, and then her mic. Lona's going to be calling in, everyone. Just give us a few minutes.
Jeff?
If you're not muted, please mute yourself. Please mute yourself. Thank you. We still have a few people arriving.
Can you hear me now?
I can hear you. So Lona's back. We're here. Lona, when you're ready, you have your.
I thought I was ready before. Obviously not. It seems like I've been saying that we have nothing new to report on the Volkswagen settlement fund process for quite some time, and it always kind of gives me a little bit of a good feeling to be able to say we do have some movement. The school bus application process is probably the first money that we will be rolling out from the Volkswagen settlement, and we are very excited to begin this process. As many of you know, if you sit in on our original webinar back a couple months ago, the Kentucky Legislature authorized $8,521,700 for school buses for the Commonwealth of Kentucky. Transit buses also got that same matching amount, and light-duty zero-emission vehicle supply equipment, which is basically charging equipment, or zero-emission equipment, hydrogen or charging, EV charging for the state, got $3,056,700, and we got some administrative costs included in $278,500. That will be how Kentucky uses the Volkswagen mitigation fund in Kentucky.
I wish people would learn how to mute.
The eligibility from, can you back up one slide, please? I think it's always important to know that the legislature did spell out specific language and how they believe that the money should be spent. For school buses, this is directly from the legislation itself. $8,521,700 shall be used to reimburse local school districts for 50% of the cost of the purchase to replace up to 5 school buses per district currently in daily use, meeting the necessary criteria with a chassis year of 2001 or earlier. If those funds are insufficient to cover that 50% of the purchase costs that the districts have requested, the reimbursement shall be on a pro rata reduced base. That means that we have $8,521,700 for school buses in Kentucky, up to 50%. If we have $9 million worth of requests, everyone will be reduced on a pro rata basis. The eligibility, again, the language from the General Assembly. It's for local school districts having a 2001 or earlier bus in daily service, maximum eligibility for 5 buses per district. If you don't have 5 buses that meet that criteria, you can request 2 buses. You can request 1 bus. If you have 5 buses that meet that criteria, but you don't want to request 5 buses, you can request a lesser amount. You don't have to request any at all. The eligibility determination, and I know there have been a lot of comments. We've already fielded some questions about an eligibility determination. Actually, when we were on the original webinar on the Volkswagen mitigation plan, we heard some school districts asking how they could go back and get a bus on the list. But we will be comparing submitted applications that our agency receives with the 2019-2020 school bus inventory. We will be looking at the school system. We will be looking at the year of the bus. We will be looking at the vehicle, the VIN number. We will be looking to see if that bus is listed as a daily service bus.
Oh.
There is additional eligibility. We heard from several school districts that said that they had a bus that was actually in operation on a daily basis that would be replacing another bus that was out for service or long-term out for service. So, if, this is a big if a local school district does not have an eligible bus listed on KDE's 2019-2020 published school bus inventory, but has a 2001 or earlier bus listed on the inventory as another type of bus, if it is being used as daily as a replacement for other daily buses being taken out of service, that school district can apply for the replacement of 1 bus. We did not want to take anyone out of the mix.
I was reading his response to your email.
Could everybody please mute?
Yes.
Oh, okay.
Who's on the phone as
Could everyone please mute?
Please mute.
Back and then I got your email and I was responding to your email and our superintendent responded to your email.
Kenya, let's just go on. I'll talk louder.
I'll find out.
They made a decision there and I wasn't a part of it, so I had to do a little checking myself.
As I said, if you do not have a bus listed as a daily bus in operation on the 19 and 20 published school bus inventory, but you do have a bus and you can certify to us that that bus is used on a daily basis, you can apply for replacement of that 1 bus.
Well, let me
but that bus has to be a 2001 or
I'm
earlier bus listed on the inventory.
A little bit here.
Lona, just
we
take
have
a moment
one
here so I
employee
can
that
take care of
is from over in that area where you guys are at, Brandy Hahn. I didn't, she's the one that kind of
Excuse
I
me,
think
there is
maybe
someone
suggested
having
or
a
directed
phone
them in that
conversation
direction.
that we can hear.
Um,
There's someone having a
is
phone
that
conversation
something
we
that,
can hear. Caller number 9. Caller number
I don't
9
know,
is
does this
not
person
muted.
bring some expertise in this area that you know of? I mean, it's possible, I know, but yeah.
Okay, Lona, you can start back. Thank you.
Okay. Next slide, please.
Yeah. Yeah.
Eligible replacement costs. We can reimburse, and this is important, it's on a reimbursement basis. Reimburse school districts for 50% of the purchase cost, and if those funds are not sufficient to cover 50% of the costs,
Yeah.
they would have, for you to request reimbursement by June 1st, the reimbursement shall be pro-rata reduced. Again, I just want to reiterate, if we get $9 million in applications, we will decrease everyone's percentage until we get down to that $8,500,000 mark. The reimbursement, the eligible reimbursements will be based on the 21 school bus purchasing guide that KDE has released, and reimbursement will be for up to 50% of the cost of a base bus. That is the base bus only. Next slide.
Yeah.
There are other important considerations. The replacement bus must be the same as the bus being replaced. That is out of Appendix D. It is class 4 through 8 buses, type of bus A through D, and the number of passengers. Now, you can switch from a diesel to a propane or diesel to electric or from a propane back to diesel. That's not the issue, but it's got to be a like size and like type of bus. And the bus being replaced must be scrapped. And there is a specific definition on what scrap means. It's to render inoperable and available for recycle, and at a minimum, to specifically cut a 3-inch hole in the engine block for all engines. And if any eligible vehicle will be replaced as part of an eligible project, it has to be scrapped. It shall also mean disabling the chassis by cutting the vehicle's frame rails completely in half.
Well, like I mentioned earlier,
we will be.
I'm not sure if our local employee, Ms. Hahn, had like a personal. She mentioned to these people, and see, this was done.
Can you mute this person?
Whoever's having the conversation on the phone, whoever's having the conversation about unemployment or whatever,
email. Apparently, they did decide that, and one of my principals said, "Yeah, Ms. Hahn suggested that her friend Megan Martin."
All right, Lona, I'm going to try
really just saying she's getting her schedule to come into the district.
Mute yourself.
Okay, that's fine.
I'll try to talk louder.
Okay.
Next slide.
And I don't know what to tell him, so I'm trying to find out. So
the application time frame. The application period begins today. It is today through October the 9th of 2020. EEC will provide notification back to the school districts no later than November the 1st on how many buses and the total potential reimbursement amount we will be providing. That gives us basically 3 weeks to look at all of the applications that we have received, to see how many buses are being replaced, the total dollar amount of that 50%, and then let school districts know what our contribution will be if they want to move forward. The application documents, we loaded those late yesterday on the EEC website. It is a downloadable, fillable PDF form. There is an instruction document that is included as well. You can download both of those. When you get them completed, you can send them to the email address listed on our webpage, it goes directly to our office, and we will be able to see who is applying for these school buses. The application itself will consist of the name of the district, a detailed description of the mitigation action and how it will help your community. And I know some of you are probably rolling your eyes, asking why we would want this information, but this is something that we have to submit to the national trustee in order to be reimbursed for those funds, in order to reimburse you. So if we don't have this information, we cannot get the dollars from the national trustee to reimburse you. If your district is in an air quality non-attainment or maintenance area, or is listed as an Appalachian Regional Commission distressed area, list the importance of the project here and how that will help that area. You have to list the buses to be replaced. And as I said, they have to be on KDE's 2019-2020 list. Then you also have to list the buses being purchased as replacements. And you have to notify us if you have an identification of the alternate eligibility status for one bus. Next slide. You have to acknowledge that the buses being replaced must be scrapped. The expected lifetime NOx emissions reduction for each proposed school bus replacement, calculated using the Argonne National Labs Heavy Duty Vehicle Emissions Calculator. There is a link to that site in the application itself, and we want to see the files, the file inputs and outputs. You can attach those to your application. And there was a question about whether or not, whether we were going to use EPA's diesel emissions quantifier or the Argonne National Labs A-Fleet calculator. We chose this one simply because it gives a slight increased nod to alternative fuels.
She's about 95% sure we're coming.
And then that document has to be signed by an official of the district, certifying that they're going to be responsible and they will be meeting all of the requirements, and that they certify that all of the information on this document is correct.
4 times in the next 2 weeks. As a parent, is that more confusing to you?
Okay.
Next slide, please.
Kristen,
And then again in
if Cindy Croucher could mute herself, that would be great.
Whatever they're, but we've already told you, and they're excited about coming in. No, it's not. Yeah.
I think the parents are going to want them to come in. I want my kid to come.
I'm going to try to help everyone. Lona, you can unmute yourself. I've muted everyone.
And we can still offer.
Okay.
I hope my information is of as great interest as what other people that are talking right now are. Next slide, please. The next steps. EEC will compile all of the applications that we have received by close of business October 9th. That is a Friday. You have until close of business Friday, October the 9th, to get us an application with all of the files submitted to that email address. We will be working for the next 3 weeks to verify the applications. We will be reconciling them with the 2019-2020 school bus inventory. We will spot check the Argonne National Lab emissions reduction results that you have listed on the applications. And then we will notify the school districts and KDE on or before November the 1st, 2020, of the potential funding available for school bus replacements. So by November the 1st, you will know if you're going to get 50% of funding for a base bus or if you're going to get a lesser amount. And then at that time, you can make your decision on whether or not you want to move forward. We believe that there are probably 170 to 175 buses at least. Of course, it will depend on what type of bus you want to purchase and the size of the bus, what that 50% will represent. If someone wants to purchase an electric bus, that's quite a bit more than someone purchasing the base price of a propane or diesel powered bus. So knowing how many of what different types of buses are going to be requested will depend on how much each district will be receiving for a bus.
So I want to thank, this is Kenya. I just want to thank Lona for her presentation. I apologize. The mute all function in GoToMeeting, just like there is in Zoom. I hesitate to mute everyone. I think we got the kinks worked out eventually. This is recorded with all of the background noise, so if you choose to listen to it later, you'll hear that. I just want to thank Lona from our group and Susie Paul in our office for also working on the application form. If you have any questions, you can type them in the chat now, and we'll be answering any questions right now. The presentations will be loaded on the website within the day or two, and the recorded session will also be loaded on our VW website as well. We're bound by the trustee to make everything publicly available. So yes, the link to the presentation and the video will be posted on the Energy and Environment Cabinet VW website for everyone to access. Hey, Lona, I'm monitoring the chat.
Can I take the question on everyone who applies?
Yes, you can take that question.
There was a question that so anyone who applies will be approved as long as they have the bus that meets the minimum eligibility requirements. That is the language from the legislation. This is not a first come, first serve. This is not a an open-ended solicitation. This is, if you have a bus that meets that criteria and you want to receive 50% of the cost of a base bus, then you can apply for that bus, up to 5 buses. And you're correct, if the percentage of the reimbursement, it will be adjusted according to the number of eligible buses that we receive applications for. There's a question on, is there a specific process for scrapping the buses? Who scraps and how certified? The school districts will be responsible for scrapping those buses. We will be developing another form, another certification form and methodologies. Hopefully by that time, the world will be maybe back to a little more normal, and someone from our office can come out and visually look at some of those buses that have been scrapped to certify that they have been scrapped. Once you sign those forms that say that you know that they will be scrapped and you know the requirements on what has to be done to those buses, you should be able to, if we can't go out to see them, to take pictures and send them to us. Again, we will be doing spot checks on who has those buses and have said that they have been scrapped.
Lona, I see that there's a question about, this is really a KDE question, so I'll leave that to Alyssa to follow up on. Will the buses be depreciated by KDE at the same rate with regard to original purchase price? That's a KDE call on that, so I'll leave that to Alyssa Hanley to follow up on. We do have a question from Chris Shadler. Can you review the information again for those who may not have a daily bus that qualifies? We have that additional, Chris, I put the additional eligibility criteria up for that question on this slide. And yes, that was during the background noise when we went over that. So here's your additional eligibility requirements there. And Lona, there was a question too. What happens if we don't spend the 8.5 million this year? That goes to the timeline of the VW money and then the language in our budget.
I was going to say that also goes to the budget bill because we have 1 year authorization. We have already set up a process in our office that once a school system gets the replacement bus, pays for that replacement bus and scraps the existing bus, when they document that information to us, we will have a very fast turnaround to be able to process payments back to the school district. For those of you who know, we have a 1 year budget. So it will be very important for us to try to pay out as many of these by June 30th as possible. We do not believe that there will be leftover funding, leftover money. There's always a possibility that there could be, but looking at the number of buses in KDE's inventory that would be eligible, I really don't think we're going to have leftover money, but anything's possible. I think that answers both of those questions. But we will have we will have a form, and we will have a scrapped form available to all the school districts that are receiving the money well in advance of them needing to replace those and send us that documentation. There's a question about, will we be able to see what districts have applied for the funding? You will not be able to see what districts have applied for the funding, but you will be able to see what districts and at what levels they will be receiving. We will, one of the requirements of the trust is to have a forward-facing public page that outlines where these funds are being used. So anytime any dollar of this redesignation trust goes out the door or is about to go out the door, you will see that well in advance.
So caller 23, please mute yourself. We heard your fax machine or some kind of interference. What Lona was saying with that is that, I'll repeat, we are bound by the trustees agreement that we have to post all of our projects online. So while you will not see who has applied, you will be able to see online all projects that are funded under the Volkswagen settlement. And we have a question. Could you show the link to the application again? Here's the link.
If you just Google eec.ky.gov, that is a link directly to our cabinet's web pages, and the Volkswagen page is on the right-hand column of our homepage. And again, later today, this webinar will be posted on our website, so you'll be able to get to it from there as well.
And Lona, there's a question from Mark Parsons. I think you said the replacement has to be the same size as the scrap bus. So a district couldn't replace a 66 bus with a 72. Obviously, district needs and available buses have changed since 2001. So if you could review that again, Lona, I believe it's a like for like, if I recall.
It is. It is a like for like, and that is directly out of the settlement itself. You have to replace a like vehicle with a like vehicle. Now, you could go smaller, but you can't go bigger.
And Lona,
There
is a question, links available on how to find out if you're in a non-attainment or maintenance county.
That is actually included on the Volkswagen webpage in the beneficiary mitigation plan. There is a table that outlines the existing non-attainment or the old maintenance areas. It is actually in there. I was going to follow up. There is a requirement. Keep in mind that this money is out here for NOx emission reductions. That is the whole point of having these funds available to us, is for those NOx reductions. And that's why we have requested, though, to see what the NOx reductions will be, and that you have to run the model. And as I said, it is a requirement of the settlement itself that vehicles be replaced on a like basis. We have had some states try to replace Class 4 vehicles, trucks, with a Class 8. That doesn't work. There's a question of what if you want to replace a handicap bus with a non-handicap bus? That is not something that is approvable.
I've also put the slide up, Lona, of the other important considerations, and I believe that we'll get to replacement bus is the class, the type, and number of passengers. So I have that slide up. And Lona, there's another question. If the bus is not a base bus, but a special needs instead, is it still like for like?
If it is a Class 4 through 8 bus, if it is a type A through D bus, it would still apply. If it is not, it does not.
All right, I don't see any more questions coming in. I do want to say I appreciate everyone's patience, including my patience and Lona and those in our office for some of the audio interference. I've been on Zoom calls, GoToMeetings, WebExes, Blue Jeans, and it never fails. We have muting issues and some audio interferences. So apologies for those that were calling in that could not, for some reason, figure out how to mute. And I wasn't willing just to mute everyone and then deal with unmuting the speakers. So that's going to conclude our webinar today. Lona, did you have any final thoughts?
We just received another question. If they request reimbursement for 5 buses, and November 1st you tell us that there isn't enough money, will you tell us how many we are approved for? Okay, it's not how many buses that you will be approved for, it's the total amount of money that you will be approved for each bus. This is going to be done on a pro rata basis. If we don't have enough money to cover 50% of the cost of a bus, for everyone who has applied for the buses, then we will reduce the percentage for everyone. So instead of getting 50% for those 5 buses, you may get 40%, you may get 45%. But on November the 1st, we will tell you how much money you will be receiving for each bus that you have requested.
And also, I know there was a thank you, John Underwood, for the propane link. Just to reiterate, Lona said this, this is to mitigate NOx emissions. Therefore, the replacement bus, just reiterating, it can be a cleaner diesel, propane, electric, or other alternative fueled bus that reduces NOx emissions. So propane is an option, but there are other options, including cleaner diesel versions. We are not showing preference to any particular option. That's where the school districts have that decision to make in terms of the type of fueled bus they are wanting to purchase under the Volkswagen to replace an older bus.
Kenya, there's also a question about the funding for shuttle buses being announced. Kentucky will have no funding for shuttle buses. The legislature laid out the requirements for Kentucky's beneficiary mitigation plan. That included transit buses, that included school buses, that included the zero vehicle emission supply equipment, and a handful of administrative costs. While shuttle buses were an eligible category under Appendix D2 of the settlement itself, Kentucky chose not to use, not to fund that option. Alyssa, I think you had a question about a 34-passenger handicap bus can be replaced with a 34-passenger non-handicap bus.
Yeah, that's to clarify the previous question, because I don't think that it was really clear whether that can or can't be done.
I see nothing wrong with that as long as the engines would have been comparable. The type of engine would have been comparable.
And I have another question, if you don't mind me being unmute, or not a question, a clarification for everyone. The question is about the depreciation of the bus. For KDE, we don't care about how the funds, how the bus was purchased. It will still receive depreciation. Just to clarify that for those who are on the call, so I don't get 100 emails.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Also, there was a question, when we're looking at the replacement criteria, it's on the screen. We will be looking at the class, the type, and the number of passengers. That's the 3 criteria we will be looking at when you propose what kind of bus you want to replace with what. So we will be looking at those 3 criteria listed on the screen. And then there's a question, Maeve Mason. The 50% is regardless of the type of fuel. It's your choice what type of fueled bus you would like, meaning propane, cleaner diesel, or electric. And if you apply for a certain bus and you change your mind, or you will have to either withdraw your application and submit a new application, or submit an amendment to your application. So put thought into it and make sure your decisions are what you want on the front end.
Because that will play into how much money is available for each district for each bus. So Kenya's correct. You need to put some forethought into what you're going to want to purchase. Because if you say you're going to purchase an electric bus, and then you turn around and say, oh, well, I'm really not, and everyone only got 45% of a bus, that's not good business.
So we would recommend not changing your mind on that one. So also on the transit, I just want to let everyone, we're working with the Kentucky Transportation Cabinet. We have a separate application process through KYTC for transit buses. That process has already been underway. We already have an intent to fund transit projects that is used the entirety of the transit bus funding. So the transit funding has already been allocated to projects. And so now this webinar is specific to just school buses and for school districts per our legislative language and our budget language, as Lona went through at the beginning of the webinar. So Joe just to let you know, we've already identified the transit agencies. Those were identified through the Kentucky Transportation Cabinet, through their Office of Transportation Delivery. That agency was listed in the budget language for the transit bus funding, and it's already been allocated. And again, your replacement bus has to meet this criteria. We'll be looking at class, type, number of passengers in terms of a like for like. Beyond those three criteria, we're not going to look beyond the three criteria listed on the screen. So it'll be the class, the type, and the number of passengers.
One clarification on that, on passengers, like Elisa said, you have a 14 passenger bus and a 34 passenger bus that are the same shell, but one is a handicapped and one is not. Then you have the same thing on a 20 and a 52 passenger bus. They're the same shell, but one's handicapped and one's not. Same thing on a 66 and a 30.
It's my understanding, you know, if it's the same class type, but the design inside is changed due to handicap or not handicapped, I believe Lona spoke to that a little bit earlier. So maybe Lona, if you want to add in on that.
I was going to say, if you have a specific question, a specific idea of what you're looking at, if you could send that to the website, to the email address directly, and we'll try to look at that and get back with you.
Okay.
And I think we're at 11:15. John Underwood, will you be posting FAQ on those determinations? If we do receive a question, I think we will be posting any FAQs that we received via this webinar. If we receive those via our official email address, then we'll respond and post those questions on the VW webpage. And again, Jamie Lawson, if you have that specific question, if you have a light bus that's no longer available, please send that question and we'll respond to that accordingly too once we take a look at that. I think that's all for the webinar today. I thank you all for all the great questions and the great feedback. Again, apologies for the audio in the beginning and for, I believe it was one of the callers who called in via phone. Special thanks to Lona Brewer in our office and Susie Paul for work on the application form. We'll send Alyssa Hanley out the notice when the website is updated. For those who are not a school district, check back in the next few days for our VW website for the posting of this recorded session, as well as the slides. The application forms are already on the website for you to start working on. Lona, do you have any final thoughts before we stop recording and close out the webinar?
Just to thank everybody for their attention this morning. I know this is funding that all of the school districts have been waiting to hear about. We're trying to do everything that we can to get the dollars out and give you all notification on how much money that you'll be receiving for buses in Kentucky. So thank you.
So again, for Todd, I see your question. Please email us any of these specific questions. I believe we have 3. We're up to 3 right now that we could post as a FAQ once we look at those questions and post those on our website. So any of these technical specific questions, just let us know, and then we'll review it and get you some answers posted. So thank you all for your time today. Everybody have a great Wednesday. And we'll be posting the slide presentations online that you can download. All right, thank you all. This will end our recording, and have a good rest of the afternoon.